Hi, this is Neil from iPaintGirls.com. In this tutorial, I'm going to show how to draw a hand from reference, but I'm going to show, there's two different kinds of methods you can do. One is drawing from reference, trying to get identical. But if someone is going to ask you, if a client is actually going to ask you to draw a hand identical from the reference, this is very rare that anyone's going to ask you to draw anything directly from reference. But if so, just trace it. Why bother yourself with all the angles and negative spaces and all that to try to get it perfect? Just trace the damn thing. This hand is actually traced, so you can actually get a lot of character in a drawing by just tracing it. And notice with the thin lines, I pay attention to the form of the hand, showing that it has three-dimensionality. And I place my lines in different ways. Some lines are thicker, like around here, to show the overlapping of objects and so forth. And I'd probably even add more character to this, make it a few more lines thicker. But anyway, so you can get a nice hand just by tracing it. And of course, they want it colored, I can color it as well. And it just depends what style they want. Now, the next thing is, well, we want to actually not trace, but we want to draw from reference. Well, there's different kinds of drawing from reference. Let's go ahead and get a reference in here first. So there's different kinds of drawing from reference. One is to actually be loose with it. The other is to draw it as perfect as possible. But again, if you're going to try to draw from reference as perfect as possible, hopefully this is just to get good at training your hand-eye coordination to seeing what you're drawing. But you still want to have a good understanding of the form of the hand and everything, the proportions. You want to know that this part of the hand is about the same size as this, with this gap in the middle that's about half of the size of that shape. And then you can take that, part of that shape there, and you can add that into the thumb, so you have these same pad shapes that go all the way through the hand. They're about the same. Then you have this shape here, which is about the same width as this here. You want to know that you have a side of a hand here and so forth. That you have form to the hand. That you have sides of fingers, you have tops of fingers, you have different planes. This is what form is all about. So you have this plane up here. You have this kind of side plane, which you can see I showed in my drawing. You have that front plane and so forth. All that kind of knowledge and the proportions and form of the hand, you want to have a good knowledge of before you even start drawing from reference. But nonetheless, so first you can kind of draw in those basic shapes, and what this will help you do is kind of get down the overall form that you're going to be working with. And so here you don't want to go too big. It's only about about that big. And then you can kind of start to put in the forms, so and so forth. And you can kind of put in the whole lump form, which is something I like to do when I first kind of get some general idea of the shapes that are going to be going there, the outline of it, right? Now at this stage here, you're just kind of putting in the different shapes that are going to belong to the object you're drawing, something like this, and you would kind of just draw it out this way. Now once you kind of have all this out and done, the next thing you would do is you would start looking at negative space and angles and stuff like that. Right, so what I would then, after I have all this kind of construct down, what I would begin to look at is negative space. That is, all this right here is negative space. So I would look at the shape that the object creates in that negative space. I'd be like, is that the same shape? Do I have that same shape, that negative space there? And that's what you want to kind of look at. And then not only negative space, but you also want to look at like angles, like relative angles. So you have this angle here, and coming out and around. It's gonna be probably a little bigger than this. And it's to come out. And then you have that angle with this angle here, the finger here, and look at the relative angles to each other. What about this angle and this angle? And it comes to a point over there somewhere. Is that kind of the same with the picture? This angle, the angle of this finger. So you want to look at angles in relation to each other. And that's how you start to develop the hand. Now the other way is to get more loose with it. So instead of trying to replicate exactly what you're looking at, because why not just trace if you're going to do that, just go, hey, that's the pose I want for my hand, and then just go with your hand dynamics, like your understanding of the human hand. So you wouldn't try to draw what you're looking at. Instead, you only look at it as inspiration. So I'm like, okay, I know I want the hand in that kind of position. That's all I'm thinking. And so I'm just kind of like, yep, I'm going to have my hand in that position, but I'm not going to draw exactly what I see. And I'm not going to try to be perfect. I'm not going to look at angles and negative space or anything like that, because at this point, I'm not trying to draw what I'm looking at. Or I am and I'm not. I'm just using it as a reference. So I know that's the shape I want my hand to be in, but I'm not actually going to draw that exact hand, if that makes sense. And I might choose to exaggerate some things and not others. I might, for example, that's too big, but anyway. Right now at this stage, I'm not concerned with details. So, but one thing I do know is that this is all way too big. I don't want it to be that big, so I'm just going to kind of put in some rough shapes here for the thumb. And I'm going to have this kind of finger shape here, and I kind of just want to mark off all this shape I'm going to be having in here. I just want just like a very loose kind of shape where the hand's going to fit into. So now that I know what the hand is going to be doing kind of based on the reference, I don't even have to look at the reference anymore if I don't want to. I can just kind of go from that. I know that, okay, I'm going to kind of have, this is what I'm going to have. And so it's just a matter of accomplishing it. Just kind of mark in the shape, the basic shape of what I kind of want in there. Okay, I'm going to have like, there's 1, 2, 3 shapes in there. 1, 2. So it's too, it's obviously too long. So I want to change that. I want 1, and then the second one should come right in here. So and then 2 in here, 3 like that. So I want to kind of alter this one just a bit. More like this. Kind of have it curved closer. And this one will be, oops, 1. The second shape would be connected to that. Would be here. 2. Once I kind of have the general layout of the hand, from that point on, I can just go in and start adding the details, the shapes of the hand. Now I have enough information now, I can work with it. So let's go ahead and move this over like that. Once you know everything is correct, then you can just kind of start adding in the details that need to be there, and kind of getting the shapes and everything down right. So I always like thumbs when they kind of look like that. And you can also add, what you think looks cool. You don't have to go by the reference anymore. You can be like, well, I think this looks cool, and so I like when hands do that. So I'm going to make sure my hand has that shape. And I like when when thumbs kind of have this shape right here. And so I'm going to put that shape in there. I'm going to go ahead and use those 3 for now. I also like to exaggerate that. I'm going to kind of put in this here, and then this kind of middle one. Those 2 like little tendon things you can see there, I'm going to exaggerate those. And now I'm going this palm here, part of that. And this one I'd mostly show with form, so I'd show with shading, which is all about paying attention to the form of the hand. And then, you know, kind of like, well, actually I want more this part down here. This would be the part of the form that's going to turn away from the light. Also, pay attention to, you know, shapes I know that occur within this area. How the wrist attaches there. This will kind of come up and overlap here. I want to show that part of the knuckle as it comes up into the finger here. I'm going to kind of show the roundness of the knuckle there. Come in again, show the roundness of this knuckle. And to do that, I like to overlap the lines, you know, to add that style in there. Kind of come in with that little bit of overlapping there. A little bit overlapping here. And finally where it overlaps at the pad of the hand. So I'm going to have to probably alter the pad of my hand just a little bit. Or her, actually. Maybe not. I should have started with more of the pad of my hand. Like I have it here. I have this part of the finger. I have this part, then I have this part like that. So that looks a little better. This one is being a lot shorter. It kind of comes down more like that. There we go. Damn it. I want it kind of like this. This whole pad here I'm not going to see. I want to kind of divide it like you have one here and then like somewhere in here you have this other finger, and I want to kind of put that finger in that area. And notice because I'm not going strictly by the photo, I'm just kind of going by my understanding of the anatomy of the hand. It's not going to be just like the photo, but that's fine because that's not what I'm going for. If I wanted to go just like the photo, then I can just trace it. But in this case, I could come up with something it's a similar hand pose. You know, it's that the idea is there, the hand pose is there, but I can add my own style and everything to it. And it'll be close enough. And that would come in there somewhere. You won't be able to see it that much. You know, so you can use like a reference like that. Let's say like it has kind of a hand pose you want, but not exactly. Or let's say it has kind of the hand pose you want, but not the kind of hand. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna use that photo reference to draw that hand pose, but I'm gonna draw it as a feminine hand, or I'm gonna draw it as an old man's hand. Okay, and then I'll go like this. Want to kind of show the form as well of my hand here. So I'm kind of wrapping the nail around this way, giving it some depth, pulling it down and letting it wrap around the form. Kind of define also the form of the object by having some shade. And one thing I'll notice right away is here I'm going to have to pull these fingers closer together to make it more accurate. So I'm going to have like maybe one here or some, and then I'm going to have the pad here coming up to about like that, and then this pad will come out. So I can't go too far up there where I had the original line. Kind of want to show that nail. I only be able to see part of it. You know, remember a finger from a side view kind of has that weird shape to it. If you look at your middle finger from the side view, you can kind of see that. It just depends on what, whose finger you're looking at and the exact angle you're looking at it at. And I don't want to exaggerate it too much, I don't think, that shape. I kind of want to show that nail a little bit over there. What I do want to show, though, is this whole entire side plane of the finger. Notice I'm not even worried about the lighting in the reference either. That's another thing. Let's say you just want you kind of want a hand pose. You don't care for it to be exact as long as it captures the likeness of it. That's all I'm doing right now. You kind of like the likeness of the pose, so you're going to capture that. That's what you're mostly focused on. You don't care about the lighting because, you know, it doesn't fit the drawing you're working on. So you're going to add your own lighting source. So as you can see here, I've added my own lighting source. And I'm only able to do that if I understand the form of the hand. If I don't understand the form of the hand, I can't add my own lighting source. But if I understand the form of the hand, then I can add any lighting source I so desire. And notice how I had, you know, made this finger right here to be way too thick. So in order to fix that, I have to pull that whole entire line in more. So I got to pull this in more, this in more, like that. But that's not a big deal. You know, it's just a quick adjustment. Pulling that. This finger is going to be, you know, falling along this other finger very closely, but it's shorter, so it's going to disappear and go behind it a little bit. Not because it's short, that's not why it's disappearing and going behind. It's disappearing and going behind because of the angle of the hand, but also that it's shorter, so I want to show that it's shorter. You know, I might show that he has calluses in my hand if I could show that by just darkening it up. It has nothing to do with form but texture. Kind of maybe add a couple little lines for detail. And so as you can see, the end of my hand, and I actually forgot to do the form for the thumb, so I'll go ahead and do that really quick. I know that there's a crease here, so I'm going to show that crease by how I do the shading here. I might even just slightly show that this does have a form that's separate on the hand. You know, it kind of has some roundness to it, to the pad. Actually, there we go. Kind of continue with this shading down here. Then there might be a little bit of shading here as well. That's a little bit lighter. Alright, so as you can see, I'm able to capture the likeness of the pose in pretty little time. It doesn't take very long to do it because I'm focusing more on my understanding of the human hand and not so much on what I'm looking at. Now, one thing I definitely might change though, you know, when I look at it and I go, oh, you know, I don't really like any of this right here. So what I probably will end up doing is taking that, because I don't want to redraw it, and kind of put it over here more, so it kind of has this, so it's closer to the hand, it's more proper. I don't want it to be so distorted and weird, so I kind of want to keep more of this, the way the thumb attaches to the hand here, and that's a little too close, so I have to go back. Okay, so what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to think of a way I could fix this without having to redraw much. I don't feel like redrawing that much right now, so I could, you know, just go ahead and redraw it all, but this is actually something I should have had down when I was looking at the actual proportions, everything that I had. Make sure that I had my thumb the way I wanted it. But the thumb does have quite a large pad that comes off the hand in its own thing, its own right. But still, it's a little bit off, so I don't want it to be that off. So let's try something like that. Sometimes you'll make little mistakes like that, and you have to fix them. And I can kind of come over here like that. So that's a little bit better. Still, I think the thumb overall might be a little too big, but that's okay. I can always, make it a little bit smaller if I needed to. But you get the idea. So that's what I do. If I'm gonna, I call it hijacking a pose, whether it's a pose of a body or a pose of a hand. I see a pose I like, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna add that into my drawing. But I don't trace it because it's not gonna fit my character. It's not my character's hand. I just look at the pose and go, okay, I'm gonna make that fit my character's hand. And then I'm going to, I'll obviously add the shading as I want it to add the shading, because I'm not going to follow the photograph shading. It's actually a great way to learn. Also, once you have a hand like that, let's say I wanted to change it. Okay, I don't really like the style of the hand. I want to turn it to something else. Let's say my character, the character that I'm drawing this hand for, is a little bit different than what I'm looking at. And it's like, I can go ahead and change it however I want to change it. But the pose has already been hijacked, so it's going to be proper. And so I go ahead and add this different hand structure, and you can see, so I'm doing like more of like a monster hand or something, but I'm using that same pose that I already had, and now it looks, it's a look different, like as if I did a whole different drawing or something, although I didn't. I had that same pose saved. And I do this sometimes. Sometimes I'll go to older drawings I had, and I'll take a pose off of something I drew previously, and I'll add that same pose, and sometimes I'll just trace over my poses that I've already done, or just kind of loosely based off of it. Just depends on what mood I'm in. And then I'll add that pose to a new character. And it's like, some people might recognize it. They'll be like, hey, that pose seems familiar. Where have I seen it before? And it's like, oh yeah, you did that pose with Wolverine once. And now I'm doing it with, let's say, Iron Man or something. And some poses only fit certain characters, so it's like, you might not be able to just take that pose and cross it over. But other times, characters will be similar enough that you can take a pose from one character and apply it to another. And you can definitely do this with hands. So as you can see there, I have this, I'm starting to get this kind of monster hand out of the same pose I just had. And you can, once you draw that hand pose a few times, it's kind of in your brain and it's embedded. So later on, if you go and draw a hand, you can easily draw it from your mind without any references, and get the same kind of look. Actually, that's not right. The pad's way down here, so it would go more like this. Okay, there we go. So you could also try the same technique, like I said, for poses, for figure posing. You can even take a look at something you've seen before, like a figure pose you've seen before. Let me go ahead and show you something. So you can take like generic poses and go, okay, I like this generic pose here. By generic, I mean there's no character applied to it yet. It's just a pose of somebody. You can take that pose there and go, okay, I like that. Let's go ahead and copy it. Let's make a new file here. Paste it in there. And let's go ahead and enlarge it to like 600. Proportions 600. Oops. There we go. Okay, so now we got like this pose we like. But let's say, we might even draw it. We can turn this into a female if we wanted to, and all kinds of stuff. What you can then do is you can take your eraser and just kind of erase over if you can really see, or just turn the opacity down. And now when you're drawing, you can add your character to this pose. So you can make some generic poses you've had before, and then you can come back in and add whatever character you want to add to that pose. So you can add your character here to this pose. So you can like to trace over. Another way to do it, instead of tracing it, would be to take it and go, let's make a new, I'll just do BS paper, go side by side, and get rid of that. I want him over here. Okay, delete this, make a new layer. So you just kind of take the idea itself, and you might even want to alter it a bit or whatever, and let's say it's more of a cowardly woman. So the breasts would be getting smashed together here. Have the arm come out like so. Right around here somewhere would be like the hips, and the hands kind of covering it. And then have her legs, knee. And so now you have a similar pose, but now it's a female character. And let's say, just trying to think if I want to. Right now, what I'm thinking of is if I want to change the way the legs are. So, for example, that leg can definitely come out more this way. And thinking, you know what? I don't know if I want to give her these super long legs. I was thinking I kind of want to go with that style, just like super long leg style, but I'm not going to do that. So instead, just going to kind of bring it back down to more normal size here. Fits the shyness I kind of had thinking about the character. Wait, now that right there captures the essence of the pose. From there, I don't even need that anymore. I can just go in and look at it. You really never need it in the first place, really, but you can kind of imagine where everything's going to be on the character. Maybe more wild. And so here I'm just kind of imagining the shoulders. The biceps going to be coming out like this. And finally the forearm, which is going to all get bigger because it's coming at us. And now I'm going to have the hands in this area here, the thumb, and then I'm going to think, how the hands are going to be there. And at this stage, I don't really consider too much about the shapes of the hands or anything. I come back and do that. But now I just want to make sure I get all this information there correctly. And finally the forearm coming down here. I kind of want the breasts to be smashed together, so one breast will be smashed more than the other, so that one will be smashed more than that one, maybe. Kind of, it's kind of being smashed like this. her head's kind of coming forward, so you're not really seeing. You might be able to see a little bit of that part of the whatever the hell that's called. Forgot. Collarbones. Now I kind of do want to draw through my character here, and I kind of want to make sure, you know, she'd have her hips in here. I kind of want to make sure I get that way. I'll know exactly what I'm supposed to be seeing and not seeing from that view. And so I can start to, you know, develop that pose into a whole different character. And you know, someone would be like, I think I saw somewhere else you drew a character in a similar pose, or maybe the exact same pose, you know, but it's the same pose, a different character. So anyway, loosely basing it off a pose you see somewhere, and changing it to be more less static. So sometimes you'll see a photograph of someone and the pose is really cool, but it's a little bit static, so you want to kind of push and exaggerate it. And then you take that same pose and just kind of push and exaggerate it some. Maybe I'll do a video on that specifically, on pushing and exaggerating poses. But anyway, so hopefully this helps, you know, when you're drawing from reference, and the loose method of drawing from reference, which is what I prefer. It's much faster and easier. If you want to, you know, practice on drawing something from reference perfectly, and you don't want to trace it, then you know you want to use angles and negative space and all that. And I find that very, very boring and mathematical, and it's not something I enjoy. So if I'm going to draw from reference for a client and they want it to be exact, I'm going to trace it. That's just the way it is, and I'm going to make it look cool, and you know, give it style with how I trace it. And if they want something similar to that, then I'm just going to do my loose, the technique I showed here, a loose representation of what I'm looking at, which is much funner to do. Alright, thank you for watching. Please go ahead and rate and subscribe if you want to see more tutorials coming in the future. That way you don't miss them.